Well, we have 10 minutes before we have something to eat, so I'm going to ask two questions for all of you. The first one relates to, in many ways, what Ian was saying, explicitly and implicitly what Jason was saying. In the mid-80s in this country, we had a Minister of Science called Barry Jones. He invented something called Commission for the Future. And Philip Adams, Ian, who interviewed you, was the first chairman. And the whole principle of the Commission for the Future is that we should have a discussion about the kind of world, society, village we want to live in, and then watch the science come forward, and rather than reacting to it and being buffeted by it, we should have that science flow into the kind of pattern that we hoped that we wanted to achieve, having imagined it for the future. Susan, does that sound like a naive approach?
It sounds like the better alternative. We all have the T-shirt over the last few decades of people being caught on the hop and sensationalist or alarmist about technology, worried about the ethics of it and so on. So surely anything that helps us anticipate and think about it in advance, how can that not be a good thing? But what's even better, as someone called James Martin once said, who's written a book about the 21st century, he said, we really shouldn't be asking what's going to happen in the future. Let's ask, how can we shape the future? And surely the technology is a means to an end. It's always been that. Ever since we've had the printing press or the refrigerator or the car, it's enabled us to achieve more, to be more comfortable, at least in theory. But we really need to now decide exactly how we want that technology to serve us, because my own view is that perhaps for the first time that technology is becoming an end in and of itself.
Yes, many of the technologies that Michael's been working on, you think have landed on us too fast, and people have become kind of attached to them rather than working out.
Well, in many cases, without getting into too much of a wrangle, it's become a lifestyle in and of itself. Biz Stone, who's the co-founder of Twitter, said a few months ago he was concerned that this was becoming unhealthy, that people were using Twitter as a lifestyle rather than as an aid to the real three-dimensional world. Yeah. So what we need to do, back to your original question, without getting into too much of a wrangle, which we can have tomorrow night, in fact, tomorrow lunchtime on this, is more an issue of being in control again, reclaiming technology so it's a means, not an end. But we do have to work out what the end is.
Michael, imagining the future?
I'm still sort of living in the space you were talking about. I think the biggest thing in that is not reclaiming the future from technology. It's not like the printing press took over from people. It was just laying there waiting to be used. So the real thing is that people yield too quickly their primacy. It's amazing. So there's a willingness of people to be led. People want freedom of choice. That's what they say. They really want freedom from choice. I'm not saying that as some kind of weird psychotic leadership
you want
thing.
Freedom from choice.
I'm just saying that people act as though they want freedom from choice. They follow anybody that tells them what to do. So there's something wrong in us, maybe in our genes, maybe in our parents, maybe only in me. But there's something wrong that we don't fight to exert ourselves the way we should. And it allows us to be very passive. It allows us to be passivated by the television. People are enslaved to it. Well, it's not the television that did that to the people. Television is just parts. It's the people who are ready to be enslaved by something. You know, the argument about religion being opiate of the masses, the key is, the smarter insight is that the masses, which is like really like 99.99% of people, are like, just like, what's a better opiate? You know, that is, it seems a fascination to disconnect from what makes humans so different. And I find that very frustrating. So to me, technology can be used as a fantastic tool in service to a blossoming of personal responsibility, interpersonal communication, real connectivity. Maybe you could read more Plato and more Socrates because you could read it in English. I mean, you could imagine using technology in a good way, or you could imagine using it in a really shallow way. And really, that's about people. Are they deep and good? Are they really shallow? And you look at voters. They get the kind of government they deserve. So like, they don't like their government. It's what's wrong with the people, right? So that's my concern.
Yeah, do jump in and Nadia, you were nodding.
Well, no, I agree with everything that's been said. Where I have a problem with the concept that we really have to lead our technology, which obviously we do because it won't happen unless we make it, is that it's very hard to have any of these opportunities. It's hard to even make a choice when you're flat on your bed in a hospital and you actually feel like hell. And I think that at some level, the promise of medical research is that we'll somehow get to the point where we can do something for at least the majority of the people on this planet that don't have the same kinds of access to the health care that we have that allow us to live till 80 or 90 relatively healthily. So I think in many ways the zooming ahead with the massive sort of world of communication has left this whole question of how we're going to deal with health and with and the issue of the longevity of various people around the world and how they're going to deal with the extraordinary healthcare costs that are incurred in the last decade or even 2 years of life as a sort of a problem that the scientists will somehow take care of.
Susan, you want to say?
No, just very briefly to respond to both Nadia and sorry,
Michael.
Michael, yes, sorry. Brian, you're not Brian.
No.
And Michael. Clearly, you can't sit there and imagine some technology that hasn't happened. Right. Obviously not. But what you can do, we could ask, those of you who are parents, what kind of people, this might pick up on something Ian was saying, what kind of people do you want your kids to be? What kind of values do you want them to have? What kind of talents do you put at a premium? So it's not so much that we're imagining the super whizzy rocket or the wondrous new cosmetic surgery or those sorts of things. It's more generally, what kind of society do we want? Mm-hmm. Because the technology will help us build that society. But what we can do, all of us, irrespective of whether we're technologists or not, is think about the real values, the kinds of humanity, the kinds of things as human beings that we care about, that we might feel we're losing. If you had kids, you might worry that they might be enslaved to this or that, and you might want them to be. So that's a good shopping list to start with. Other people might have others, but surely we need to have these shopping lists on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that it would be lovely if we could actually direct the way technology goes, but it's got a life of its own, and it goes where people who are interested in furthering it will push it. And, already we've got a situation, as I've discovered in the last year or two, I didn't know this, but I keep getting communications from teachers that they're finding suddenly that children have to be taught how to read the human face. This is extraordinary. I mean, until a few years ago, only autistic children had to be taught how to read a human face. So something has happened already that is going on with your children, and will be presumably more so with their children, unless we make some choices. And the technology is moving on so fast now that it's a different quality of decision. We haven't got the time to sit back and think, oh, we'd like a society like this. It's happening, and I think probably we'll vote with our feet. I'm a great believer that negativity is terribly creative. Most things come forward because you say no to something and you stop doing something, rather than you have a plan, you're going to do this. You simply stop doing something, and then you see what arises in the space that was already there, but you simply hadn't noticed it or seen it. And I think what we have to probably do is set limits to how we use certain tech. We have to be responsible. There are lots of things in our adult lives that we enjoy using. If we use them all the time, we'd be addicts. Our lives would be no good at all. So we have to actually limit, in a responsible way, what we do with technology.